About this idea, but I think I've heard both of you talk about this idea, maybe different words or different ways. But the idea that some people just like eat just because your body needs a certain amount of stuff. So it's fuel. It's kind of more than that. Or the idea that I think the three of us would go more along with is that a meal or food is a celebration, is joyful, is a time when we share being together and everything like that. I don't know, Rebecca, what do you think? Am I off base, or is food just fuel?
No. I mean, I have like my stepsister. She eats. Food doesn't make a difference in her life, and I have a couple of other friends too. I mean, it doesn't matter what they eat; it's not important. They'll eat the same thing every day. They don't. It's not part of their lives, and it's very strange because they didn't grow up that way. So I'm not quite sure if it's some sort of brain set, but I think it's sort of like the linchpin of our society is eating and celebrating. My whole family, my parents, it was all about being around the table, the dinner table. I mean, we even had lunch together when we were, home. My mom would put out the lunch and fruit and or friends came over to play when we were little. My mom would always ask, do you need some sandwich or a snack or fruit? So, oh my gosh. I mean, I eat the meal, and everyone says this, and I'm planning the next one, or what I'm going to eat.
For the next one. Caroline, what do you think, Caroline?
Yes, I mean, I think that I've been exposed to seeing food as fuel as well as a connector around celebrations. I mean, I think that we are fortunate to live in an area, and a lot of us live lives where it can be a celebration, and it can be about decadence and reward and exploration and entertaining and all of those things. And I think that as you look across the country, there are many people who are working, and the sort of sit down luxurious meals that offer experience aren't important. What they are looking for is something to get them through their work shift, through their physical work, or something just to propel them to the next task that they have to do. It might be standing up in a kitchen somewhere, leaning against their car, out in a field in Central California between picking vegetables. So I think there's a lot of different ways to look at it. I do think, though, culturally, food has been a way to kick off a celebration, because certainly having food, if you go way back to the beginning of time, having any food at all was a way to bring people around a fire, that, the cavemen would kill something and then they would cook it, and there would be a family or a group around a fire, and that would be a celebration of sorts. I mean, we see both sides here in a grocery store, people who are using it for sustenance, for energy, and fuel, and people who are using it in ways that might be more elevated.
Yeah, interesting. That's really good. I had this idea, and maybe we'll all do this, or a bigger group of us, or something, where we each get a can of pork and beans, like the really cheap crummy brand. I don't know, maybe Kirkland has good pork and beans. I mean, I can't remember the last time I had canned pork and beans, to be honest with you. But each of us start with that and say, okay, take the can of pork and beans, and now turn it with minimal dollars, turn this into something interesting or lively or visually stimulating, or elevate the taste somehow, and just use your creativity and see if you can take this really inexpensive thing and turn it into some kind of celebration, with less than $5 of other stuff you toss in there, and just see it'd be kind of fun, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
that would be fun.
Or pick something like something mundane. I mean, I think we all think of, like a lot of people's go-to is like pasta. It's like, oh, I don't really have anything here to eat, but
Right.
I've always got some kind of pasta, and let's see, I can scrounge up something. Rebecca, I'm always seeing you put photos of, you're putting stuff within pot. I don't know, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think that comes from experience, or age.
Yeah.
Even. And just, I open up the cupboard. I mean, I don't really plan my meals, even when I have a big event. I'm very flexible. I go into the store and I see what looks good. The beets looked good the other day, and the asparagus was excellent. Yeah. So I just kind of like think about it, and then what I have in my fridge, and then put it together.
Yeah.
It's, like cauliflower, and I love parsley, pestos with parsley, or carrot tops, I use it all. I save the beet greens and do different. I save it and then try to figure it out. Like when I did the topping, the kimchi on the soup, I was thinking.
Yeah.
It just can't be a bowl of, green soup. It needed something on it. But I thought that was, Caroline, when you were talking about, do you notice that people sort of buy the same things, or have you ever seen that? Like people that come in and they buy the same thing, like and not just staples for their pantry, but this is what they eat. Like just a lot of.
Yes, there's actually a customer I know that has, he is super organized and would laugh at this. It's not a criticism, but like completely compulsive. His house is immaculate. He has systems for everything. And he has a list, a standard list that doesn't change. He prints it out before he comes here every time and highlights the items that he's going to get. And these are brand items. He does not vary off that list.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I go in and sometimes just, I abandon the mission. The whole, I just get carried away like, oh my God, now, because I see something and then I'll just do the whole meal around it.
Well, interestingly enough, I think that maybe this, or we've talked about this in person, but, I worked for a company long before I worked at Surf Market, and our job was to design and build grocery stores. And the company I worked with actually built the first Whole Foods in Northern California and many ones after that. And the purpose of the design was to have people abandon their shopping lists, to let the merchandising, the layout of the store, the lighting, everything dictate what would end up in carts. So, I think it was a real shift. There's very few people I see shopping with lists, but the ones that do are pretty disciplined. But most people are relying, like what you're saying, Rebecca, is you come in, you see what looks good, you go on sort of a sensory, impulsive kind of look-see. You might know the basics you want, but you're waiting for something to speak to you. So, that responsibility lies on the grocery store, the farmer at the farmer's market, or whatever retailer to entice the customer.
And lately the supply chain.
Yeah.
Also, that we haven't had much control over,
Right.
including you in the grocery retailers, and stuff. And even if you're buying direct from farmers or ranchers, they don't, their business has been disarranged outside of their control.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. Yeah. Fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about the social aspects of eating together and what I don't know, what you find satisfying socially when you sit down for a meal, whether it's family or friends, or like Rebecca, you cater a lot of you do a lot of private chef events. And have you ever done, Caroline, did you ever do private chef stuff? Oh, okay. Yes. So you both have. Anyway, let's talk about that, because from both angles, not just you and your family, but then when you come in and you're putting together a meal for, how do you make everybody, what's the social aspect of it? How do you liven that up? How do you bring your joy into what you're doing?
Rebecca, you want to start?
Well, I just did one on Saturday.
Mhm.
So everybody is always so nice, and they want to help too. Like they want to come into the kitchen and talk. Of course, I don't let them help, but we talk about the food and where it came from and what the dish is. And I always, and I've been lucky. So most of the people that I cook with want me to be a part. I don't sit down with them. Sometimes I do. They want you to do that, but they want you to explain the food, like where you got it and the spices you use. I did sort of a Middle Eastern dish with that snapper. I did roasted spaghetti squash, and you have to make it. Say, it takes you out of your comfort zone. I think you would know that too, Carolyn. When you have to cook for other people, that okay, there's no gluten, there's no this, there's no that. You have to be careful of this sugar. I don't really cook with sugar, like a lot of chefs use a lot of sugar. It's a kind of a fallback gimmicky thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about sugar and things, not like Thai food that's sweet, some spicy salt, although that can be too sweet too. So I get them involved in what they're eating, and they really like that. They like it when I stand there and tell them, what they're eating. And I do that at home too. And I have friends that copy me now. It's so funny. Like they'll explain the dish. They'll up and they'll say what the dish is. And sometimes it's not easy. You kind of forget, you're like, okay, what did I do with this? And how did I do it? Especially they want to know spices. And so I just think it's fun. I don't have a problem talking to everybody. I really like that, and talking about the food and everyone's so interested in food now. It's part of the conversation. I think in the old days, probably that's probably why I didn't like catering so much. If it was so strict and you're they don't want to hear you and they barely want to see you. So, but it's changed now. So
yeah, they really have. What do you think, Caroline?
I mean, I think where my mind goes is around what I try to do in my role across the board at Surf Market. When you put down a meal in front of friends, families, clients, etc., you are offering them a communal experience and discovery. So experience and discovery over and over again. And that's my mantra for the way I merchandise and buy for Surf Market. So here you are, a meal comes down and everybody is experiencing the same thing. There could be exceptions like, dietary, but mostly people are experiencing the same thing.
Yeah.
So that is very uniting. And, it is, without it even being spoken, it is a way to connect a group because everybody has the same thing in front of them. Yeah. And I think there's something very sweet about that, and very emotional is too strong of a word, but it conjures up sort of a feeling of connection. And I just think that that is something that people really enjoy. And I think it's something people have realized how much they have missed during these 3 years of the pandemic. To be able to search each other's faces when they break into a smile after you taste something, or you sit back and you're just like, wow, this is amazing. And I'm so happy we're together, because the layers of the food does one thing, the proximity to friends does another, the environment does another, and it just feeds into this experience that I think is really beneficial for connecting with people.
Yeah. Tell me each what some of your favorite social moments or memories were around food, which wouldn't have to be a sit-down meal, but food was included, where it was, I don't care if it was friends or family, some great memory that you have that was around food, and the social connection became memorable to you, something you remember from wherever, yesterday or way down in your past, or a good one. Go ahead, Rebecca.
I mean, mine would be in my grandmother's kitchen in Edmonton, and the windows were always steamed up, and the pierogies and the soup and the food that just was there all the time. I mean, I try to think if there was ever a time there wasn't a pot on that stove of something, or big, huge, the pork, the pork back or the bacon, like the pork belly, and sitting on the table and playing cards, and and the paprika. And as a child going there, since we lived in California, and we would go at least a couple times a year, I couldn't wait to get there. I couldn't wait to get there to smell that food, and she never let me down. There would be, and it was just so, my mom made pierogies, but not like my mom's, or the cabbage rolls that my grandma made. Just amazing.
Yeah, really cool.
It was always there nonstop, even from going out in the garden and eating the carrots and the peas. I practically ran out of the car,
That's great. That's great. Caroline?
I have two that come to mind. A little background is I grew up in a family that we only had meals together on holidays. My sister and I ate separately from my parents and earlier than they ate. And in my 20s, I worked at Chez Panisse, and I was lucky enough to sit down at communal staff meals. And that's when my love of food and interest started to become electrified, because the food that came out at a staff meal at Chez Panisse was as good as any restaurant I've sat in some cases better. And just that inspiration and the conversations, I just remember, again, being completely electrified by the possibilities for connection around food. And sometimes this would be like, oh, they just pull a bunch of farm eggs out and make a big egg salad and grill some bread. It wasn't fancy, but I started to feel the meaning of having, meals with sort of a family of sorts. And secondly, a memory that when I read your questions, George, I was reminded of. I was in my 20s and I went to Grenada, and there was a man walking down the street, and he had a giant hat made of fans, like from a coral reef. And it was like a crazy top hat, something you would see at like Burning Man. And we got to know him, and I'm going to forget his name, but we would see him every day. And finally he said on Christmas, because we were there at Christmas, why don't you come over to where I live? And he hand drew a map, and we took a motorcycle, and he lived in the middle of a coconut grove right on the beach with nobody around him, and over a fire using fresh coconut and all sorts of spices. Grenada's in the Spice Islands, sort of historically, so curry, but he made the most incredible curried fish stew that we had in very simple bowls that were chipped and screwed up, sitting on logs in this coconut grove on Christmas. And I just realized that it really wasn't necessarily, the food was delicious, but it was so simple, and it was so authentic, and it just like poured out of him. This is who he was. This is how he knew to make it. And it was the most like genuine gift that he could give us, and his pride around it was really special. So I'll never forget that.
And need to get back to. And sometimes I've gotten to where people come over, and I try to be so organized, like everything, the kitchen's cleaned, everything's made, everything's prepped, from the salad, other than putting it together. And now I'm trying to loosen up and go back to, getting people more involved. They want to see you do things, or they want to help. Maybe they want to, like say making pierogies all together. Or remember my girlfriend Maylin with her mom making pot stickers. Like making these things together, I think is really kind of fun. Like that's what's so neat about paella.
Oh yeah.
Because you make that in front of everyone, and it's exciting.
It is. And it's visually beautiful. No matter what kind of paella you make, it looks gorgeous when it's done.
So I really
that's really cool.
Really like doing that. And
okay, cool. We'll think of
one thought that I had, especially thinking of the banner that will be over this next issue around community.
Yeah, right.
One thing that I was thinking of that, and you've probably heard me say this on Peggy's Place. So if we were in San Francisco right now, tonight, even with COVID, you would have hundreds of choices where you could either go or you could do takeout. So here, even prior to COVID, the choices are pretty limited.
Right.
However, I have found some of my best food experiences to be in the homes of friends here on the Mendonoma coast.
Oh, neat.
You know, the return to regular dinner parties where somebody invites you in, shows you into their world of food and allows you to experience that and have conversation, that there is this real wonderful part of our community that where all of this is happening. And we see these baskets going out of Surf Market, and I talk to customers, and there's a lot of entertaining going on in homes, which to me is really lovely.
Yeah.
And I know it's been limited, but again, I think, you know, you can't get everything in one place. So we don't have all the choices of restaurants, but what we do have is an opportunity to really connect with each other in intimate ways. And as we move through the pandemic, I think that will continue to increase. And I'm all for it. I think it's a really lovely way to get together with friends and enjoy their homes and share your home and enjoy each other over delicious food.
Absolutely. Absolutely.